For those people out there who will say, well, no, Jane, if you read one of her books, I can't remember the particular book it's in, the particular line it is in there. Seth said he's only going to work through us, but that was, you know, that was never answered in the pretext of actually. Well, that just means for what the time that Robert and Jane were, on this in this incarnation on this planet for. I mean, the question was never put. Well, what happens when Jane and Robert are passed on? Would Seth come through someone
Yeah,
else?
I agree. I think you're right on with that. I think, and we've sort of drilled him on that. Why did you say that? And he said, well, that is it. I was not going to muddy the waters by coming through others during that time frame, as he says. I have this different skill set, and he comes out differently through me. When he was coming through Cass Smith, the woman that I hypnotized, it was also a different expression. She had a difficult childhood. She was also a recovering Catholic. So the first book is all about that. I mean, you can read it as a sort of a subtext. A woman trying to escape a difficult childhood and the sort of dominating, harsh authority that some people find in Catholicism. And she said that some spirit, some guy, she said, is breaking into my meditation and saying that he wants to write books again. He calls himself Seth. You know about Seth? Yeah, I know about Seth. I've been a student for many years, since I was 18 or 19 with the first books. So I was initially suspicious because about ready to graduate from the university, and I was thinking, well, my colleagues are putting me on. They knew I was a Seth guy. So, Seth has returned. Oh, great, yeah. Well, let's see if he's returned. So she comes in for her appointment. I did a brief induction, and this is all on my YouTube page. I videotaped all of this stuff, verbatim.
Do you have the original tapes?
Yeah, I have the
Yeah,
original
yeah, yeah.
tapes. Most of them, 80% of them, are on our YouTube page, and you can view them. Seth Publisher at YouTube. Literally, after a few seconds of inducement, suggestions, you're getting sleepier and sleepier and sleepier. And then I asked for Seth to come through, and she said in this guttural voice, "Mark, I'm here." And I had this moment
Of course.
of recognition. Wow, maybe this is true. It was sort of a telepathic thing, but I gave him some confirming type questions, sort of drilling him on questions that only Seth would know, or Jane Robertson and her family, stuff that I'd researched. When we published the first book, I was raring to go. The first people we contacted while we were developing the book was Robert Butts. He wrote us back. We thought we'd get his blessing. He wrote us back. He used to communicate in these neat little cartoons.
Yes.
On Post-its sometimes, or scrap pieces of paper.
Yes.
I have a collection of them. And he basically said, well, I wish you luck with your project. But he also included some other people that claimed to their material, other people that claimed to communicate with Seth and write material through him, which was, I could see what he means about this is obviously not Seth. But he essentially gave us tacit approval.
It's just, this really happened. You really had this lady that came to you for a hypnosis session, and Seth came through. And obviously then eventually Seth, you started to channel Seth. So there was a bit of a jump between going through the original source that came into for a regression to coming through you. What was that transition like?
Well, that transition was about Cass's reluctance to be the mouthpiece for Seth, to be a public figure. She is not comfortable being a public figure. She had a teenage daughter who's grown now to raise. She was living with her husband, and she wanted her privacy. So we essentially agreed that I would be the mouthpiece promoting this original work, this first book, 9/11, and we would go about it that way. Now, over the course of a couple of weeks as we published, she became increasingly more uncomfortable with the idea of instant notoriety, becoming famous, because, it's funny, she did not know who Jane Roberts was, had never heard of Seth when we got together. She was very surprised, but in doing some research, after we completed the 9/11 book, she read in one of Jane's books about the fans. Seth's students would come and camp out on their porch waiting to hear from Seth and Jane. She didn't want that type of being famous.
No.
And so she decided to leave everything to me and went to essentially study with Benjamin Graham and be a part of that practice.
Yes.
She was a very gifted, she is a very gifted medium. I mean, it was amazing the way that she could bring in these different entities and such.
Yes.
Very skilled.
Have you ever wondered, can you communicate directly with spirit guides, teachers, or non-physical consciousness, or even our higher selves? What would they tell us? My name is Kevin Moore, and since 2015, I started to practice a form of communication which is termed channeling. I have been interviewing experts on my talk show to find out, does life continue after we die? And can we communicate with those that have crossed over? With each expert I spoke to, they all had different ideas. Is there knowledge from the past which could be shared with the present moment? So I thought, why not just speak to the non-physical world directly through channelers around the world? And that's what I set out to do. They Call Us Channelers will take the viewers on a journey into the phenomena known as channeling. And my main goal with this docuseries is to bring a new understanding and awareness to channeling by looking within ourselves and asking, is it truly possible that we can all use this innate ability? Well, Kaz, thank you for joining us. I'm actually in Florida right now as we speak. What part of Florida is this? This is
Ocala.
Ocala, Florida, yeah. And you were kind of the main reason for me coming to Florida, actually. And I'm so glad that this did pull me enough to want to come to Florida, because there were many other people that I've now booked myself up to see as well.
Mm-hmm.
So this all just fell in alignment. It was all just synchronicity, just kind of meant to be.
Mm-hmm.
So I love when things happen that way.
Yeah.
Yeah, no resistance, right?
None.
None.
I like that too.
Yeah. So you contacted me with your story, and there's a lot to talk about here, isn't there?
Yes.
Yes, there is a lot to talk about, and I think it's fascinating, the story as well. I think we'll go straight into what the bulk of this is going to be, and then we'll go into your story. So you channel a group called Seth.
That's correct.
How long ago did you channel that group?
In 2002.
That's when it first came through.
Yes.
Yeah.
Somewhere in 2001, and then 2002 I pursued it even further. I was actually getting the dialogue coming to me at night, mostly at night, sometimes during the day, disrupting my entire family life. But I felt like it was really important because it was things that I'd never heard before, and I don't speak like that. So I would get up in the middle of the night and write it down. And I had pages and pages of this stuff, but I really didn't realize who or what or I was talking to tell you the truth. It never identified itself until later on.
Okay. Let's just go back to the beginning of your story here as well. So that's what this is going to be about, right?
Mm-hmm.
But there's obviously a lot more to it than that, yeah? So, if you go back before 2001 to a time when, just before this was taking place, what was going on in your life then? I mean, what was going on with Cass?
I was basically just a housewife and mother, raising my daughter. And right after 9/11 happened, it actually felt like part of me died. And something else, I don't know, I can't explain what happened, but I felt like I was on this quest all of a sudden to find out what was going on with that event. And my sister sent me this book called Many Lives, Many Masters by Brian Weiss. And so I read that book, and I wanted to become, I wanted somebody to regress me and see where my past life was. I also I remember this guy's name, I think it was Gary Newton. Do you remember who he is?
That rings a bell for some
Something
reason.
about something the soul. He wrote 2 books, and it was more about past life regression.
Michael Newton.
Michael Newton,
Yes.
right. Yes, and he's the one, I read both of his books, and I contacted him first. And I said, could you regress me? And he said, no, I'm retired. I'm not doing that anymore. He lived up in Lake Tahoe, I think, at the time. And he said, but, you should be able to find somebody to regress you. So I started looking around, and I found this guy down there in San Jose. And I went to see him. We had 2 sessions, and both times he regressed me, and I was in some lives that I was recalling, or I think they were my lives. No, again, when you're regressed, you don't really know whether it's true or not true. You just see things, images, and it feels like they're part of your experience. So anyway, he did the 2 regressions, and at the end of the second one, I launched into this language, and it scared me as well. And I was talking in that language for probably 10, 15 minutes. And when I came out of it, he said to me, he goes, I probably wouldn't tell anybody about this because they might lock you up and put you on Thorazine. And so then I was really scared because, what happened here?
So let's just play a clip of one of those sessions. And this is once you've been put down, and then the language is starting to come through. So let's just play that now.
Okay.
So from that clip, you can see that your hands are starting to raise. I mean, we've cut it so that it goes straight, from the hands starting to raise, then it's going to, the voice coming through, and you don't remember that voice at the time. You didn't remember.
No, I don't remember that. Well, I remember that I was speaking in another language, but I was talking to beings that I was actually looking at, and as I told the guy after it was done, I said maybe they just didn't want you to hear this conversation. And so that's why it was in that language, because he was kind of curious as to what it was. All he said to me was maybe it was some form of Aramic or whatever without a regional dialect. But in my experience, as I'm talking this language to these beings, there's 3 or 4 of these long-haired men. They were all males. They were very tall, with long, really long hair and piercing blue eyes and really white skin. And I was sort of in front of them, like a tribunal almost, because they were up high and I was down low, and I felt like this little bitty peon, talking to them. And what I can convey from the conversation that I remember is that we were talking, I was asking if there was some way that they could use me to help humanity wake up after this 9/11 event. It seemed to me like this was an event that, people were starting to come together. It felt like they were, and that maybe the consciousness of the country was going to change. I don't know. But I wanted to be part of that if they would allow it. So that's kind of what the conversation went.
But to you were speaking English to your own ear, not to your ears, but to your knowing that wherever you were, in whatever reality you were in, it was English to you.
Yeah, I could get the conversation in bits and pieces in English, but not always. But yeah, fragments of it were coming in English, and then the rest of it was, some of it I wasn't even aware of. I didn't even, because it went on for 10, 15 minutes. Some of it they didn't even let me have a memory of after I came out.
Now, I said this to you off air, that this could have been an agreement that at that time, at that moment, they were meant to come through for you to have the free will to say, look, I don't want this, or maybe for you to say, yes, I accept this.
Yeah.
And this was the opening to you channeling the Seth Group. I mean, I don't want to put ideas into your head that aren't true, but it could have been an agreement at that time.
Well, I guess it seemed to coordinate itself with what the events started to unfold. I remember when I came out of that session and I was driving back to Marin County from San Jose, everything was illuminated. I mean, it looked like the trees were alive and dancing, and I just could not get over what the state I was in, because it was really foreign to my normal state. And I felt like I was in a completely different dimension. And one of the things that really struck me is that, on the Highway 280, there's a lot of road rage in California and people speeding and all this kind of stuff. And I was completely oblivious to anybody around me. And all the drivers, whatever was going on, it was like I was not in that world anymore. And I felt like I left this world and was now part of another world. And that stayed with me for quite some time.
It's a beautiful feeling,
yeah.
isn't it?
It was a really euphoric feeling, as a matter of fact.
But then when you try to explain that to maybe your daughter or husband...
No, they didn't want to hear anything about that. No, they were both, oh, Mom, you're crazy, and my husband too, he didn't want anything to do with any of that, and in fact he was getting really upset that all of this material was, kind of being written in the middle of the night and waking him up, and I had a little flashlight by the bed. And so when I'd hear these things, I had a little notepad and I'd start writing everything down.
And this was a different voice to that which you spoke. It was a different intonation to the way you would speak. It was a different kind of vocabulary.
It phrased things differently than I talk. It was kind of foreign to the way I speak. I mean, it was definitely not me. I mean, to be honest, it felt more intelligent than I gave myself credit for. Okay, and so I didn't think it was me talking, because I just don't have that kind of vocabulary. But it seemed to want to, tell me what was going on about my reality. you know.
What questions did you have for it?
I just let it talk at that point.
What was it saying at that early point?
It was talking about 9/11 and all kinds of stuff. I don't know. I haven't read the book in years. I don't even remember what's in there now.
Because this turned into a book, but at the time...
It did, yeah.
But did you ever question it, though, to say, who are you?
No, I didn't question it for a long time until I went into this lady's office in San Rafael.
So this was the next regression session you had?
Yeah, it was the next regression.
Why didn't you take any further... Oh, you didn't take any further regressions with the other chap? Because it was beyond his scope.
Well, he was pretty far away, too. It was an hour drive each way to go to him, right? So I'm thinking maybe I could find somebody more locally, you know. And I found this lady in San Rafael, and, you know, she asked me if she could see the tape. I had the tape of the language that I spoke. I had to go home and get it for her. But, you know, she took me under hypnosis. And this is when the being said that its name was Seth. And, of course, I had never heard of Seth, so I just figured it's just some little common name, really.
You'd been speaking to it with conversations at night. You know, there's a third person that had come into you and your husband's relationship, in a sense. And then... with her, that's when the name came through. Do you think she recognized who the Seth was, maybe?
Yeah, I believe she did. She said she was familiar with someone named Seth.
As in,
but she didn't really elaborate on that. She just left it at that.
As in the Seth material?
Well, maybe. I don't know. You know, she didn't really elaborate to me on any of it.
But one would think that's what she was referring to.
And later, I kind of figured that's probably what it was.
And again, I believe she lost one of your tapes.
Well, the tape that I gave her of the, under hypnosis,
now.
right?
Yeah.
She lost that, and so I was kind of agitated with her because I thought she's a little bit of a scatterbrain. You know, she wasn't keeping her appointments on time or anything like that. And finally, I just said, "No, this isn't going to work." You know, she was kind of a like I said, scatterbrain.
But then she had opened you up to then, well, what is Seth? Now, did you go out then and research Seth?
No.
Why not?
Well, she didn't say that it was anything that was available to research.
Yes.
She just said she knew of that, but she didn't tell me anything, really.
Did you start researching that, what channeling was at the time? Were you aware that you were channeling?
No. I didn't even know what channeling was, that, like I said, this thing was talking to me, and I was just listening. And then I kind of got the idea that I must be talking to somebody that wants to come in from the other side, because, again, I'm reading Brian Weiss and the people on the other side, so I'm thinking maybe this is somebody from the other side that wants to talk.
Someone was knocking at your door, yeah.
Yeah.
But childhood, was that sort of, religious upbringing?
No, we were raised Catholic, and my mother and father remained Catholic, but all the rest of the kids, we just didn't bother with it, really,
Was there a metaphysical kind of line of research with you whilst living in California?
Not really, not at that time, because I just wasn't into any of that stuff. Like I said, I was married, my husband's very conservative, and maybe once in a while we would take our daughter to church, but that really went over like a lead balloon most of the time, so I just kind of gave up on that too, But we were just living a life really without any kind of connection to God or spirit or, spirituality or anything like that.
Why were you okay with this voice coming through, and where was your discernment?
I wasn't really okay with it, actually, if you want to know the truth. It was getting to be annoying, and that's when I asked that lady, I said, I really want to know what the name of this, who this is, because it's waking me up at all parts of the night, and, I'm not getting good sleep because I'm hearing all this stuff, and it's just constant dialogue, and so you're trying to sleep, but you got this dialogue going on in your head, and it seems rather important.
Incredible. Yeah. And it felt like you could trust it. It felt
it felt, and you know what? I never made the correlation between that and that hypnotic session down in San Jose for some time, because it didn't really launch itself into me for probably a good 6 months or more after all of that. Yeah. So I wasn't really putting two and two together. A big delay there.
So obviously you wasn't going to go back to the second regressionist that you'd been to see. So then, who was next on your agenda? Because you wanted to do more regression sessions. Because that was the regression session a way of connecting to this entity, or no? Is it a group he was connecting to?
Well, it later identified itself that it was part of a group known as Seth. And that I could go ahead and call it Seth, but it was part of a group called Seth. But then it also, during some of these sessions, was claiming to be the same Seth that Jane Roberts apparently channeled. And I didn't know who Jane Roberts was either.
Well, we'll get into that story. We'll move into that part. So, who did you go see next?
Well, I went to see a guy in San Rafael. And went in there and talked to him, and he said, yeah, we can do some regressions. And so he, put me under hypnosis. And I said to him, this being's been coming through. I think maybe it may not have been the first session, although it might have been, because I don't remember, that was calling itself Seth. And I wanted to know what it was going to be, what did it want from me? And so then he seemed to think that this Seth was a very important character from, writing books. And that's the first that I heard about this guy was writing books, or someone was writing books using that name. And so he wanted to pursue that further. And it seemed like the entity itself was also saying, I want to talk about 9/11, And so I'm going to be speaking through me, Cass, to talk about that.
Now, this gentleman that you're talking about, his name is Mark Frost.
Correct.
Now, Mark Frost has been on my show twice. He says he's channeling Seth. So let's move into this beginning part of your encounter with Mark. So Mark was he was a hypnotherapist, wasn't he? He just trained to be a hypnotherapist, I believe.
I'm not sure what his career was, something in psychology, but he was doing hypnotherapy as well.
Right.
And I think the lady told me about him.
The previous one that you've been to see.
Yeah, because she was just a couple blocks away from there.
Right, okay. So your fate was meant to have met Mark, by the sound of it. So he had an active interest in the Seth material. It had helped him a lot in his past as well. You come along, you mentioned that this being called Seth is coming through, and he then would have presumed that to be something connected with the Seth from Jane Roberts. So what happened in a sense? So the regression sessions, the early regression sessions took place where he got to speak to Seth, Mark, and Mark was able to then question Seth. And some of those questions would have been, for example, I'm guessing, what is this the same Seth as Jane Roberts, as you've said before? And it was, what's interesting here is it called itself a group, the Seth Group. That's interesting.
Yeah, it did, but it said it called itself Seth too, but it said it came from a group called Seth. Okay, so, and yeah, this Seth group, he said, was billions of years old.
Now, obviously, I've had a lot of Seth people on, and they quote the pages and the references in the book where Seth says that he'll never come through anyone else except for Jane Roberts. Now, whether that's Jane Roberts while she's alive or just probably it's full stop Jane Roberts. But your story tends to add up here because you're not lying to me, are you?
No, and I didn't even know who this character was. As far as, I don't even, to this day, still don't really know who that was. But, that's the name that it gave, so that's what I called it.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. Which is incredible. And that makes a lot of sense, a group. I've never heard it called that before. But on my journey of interviewing more channelers than anyone else in this early part, that I also come across an African-American mum and daughter who also channel Sethia, and it's a group, and their interview is going to go up soon on my channel. It was just funny that, when we were speaking over the phone, that it was calling itself a group. So what did Seth say about Mark's involvement in the work that you guys started to do? Because when did it start to turn from, client patient regression sessions to more of a working companionship?
Well, I told Mark about all of the documents that I had been taking notes on, and this entity said that it wanted to write about it. It needed to talk to the world about 9/11 and some of the things that were going on. And so I had all this material already, and he said, well, we should collaborate together to bring forth a book, because it seems like this entity wants to have this book, and it started laying out chapter names and all kinds of things like that. So, but it also said that, when it brought me in there, that it told him that he was not able to actually channel that entity because his brain wasn't lined up to it. He wasn't wired for that. So, but he was playing an important role in facilitating the sessions so that they could happen.
Just like Jane Roberts and her husband did.
Probably, I guess it was a duo of some sort, right? And so but I was the actual energy that lined up with the energy of this being.
How did Mark feel about that only you could bring it through?
I don't know. You would have to ask him. He seems to be pretty intensely involved with, wanting to be a Seth channel. But during those sessions, the entity told him that it could impress him on his thoughts only, but that he could never bring it through his body. So,
right,
interesting. He just left it at that, and I continued to channel it.
So you guys had an agreement for the book?
Yeah, we have a written agreement, and that book and all future books, which I still have that agreement, but then once I paid him the $1,000 to get the first printing of the book done, I got notified by his girlfriend that they were taking over and that they didn't need me anymore, and that I asked about the money. Could I get the money back? And they said, we have our expenses and we're going to deduct them, and we're going to be charging you for those sessions, so, don't be looking for any money from us.
So basically there was a bit of a fallout between you both.
Yeah, they basically told me that they're not going to have me involved in it anymore, that the two of them are going to do it.
So you had already written out parts of future books?
I did, yes. And I had given those to him, and the titles of future books, and definitely all the chapters in the first book and maybe some in the second book. I can't remember, but I gave him quite a bit of information.
How did you feel when he, decided that he was basically going to channel Seth himself and you were no longer needed?
I didn't realize he was going to channel Seth himself. At that point, he was going to promote the book without me.
Right.
And they were going to take over. I had no idea that he was going to actually attempt to channel Seth himself. I sent a lot of emails to him saying, look, we need to get this resolved here. We have a contract, and if you're going to promote that book, then, you need to pay me for my share of that. And all my emails went unanswered. And then the next thing I know, they leave Marin County and go hide out in Lake County somewhere.
Well,
I don't know why they left.
Maybe not hide out. Maybe they left for their own reasons. But I'm guessing if Mark was here, and just to be fair to Mark, that he may probably have a different take on it. But this is here for your version of things. Because I just think it's important to do this interview. That's why I'm here.
Yes. It took 2 years out of my life to get that book together, and it was kind of sad to me that it was just all taken.
But at the time, your husband, when advised you to sort of leave it and move on from it.
Yeah, my husband said to me, don't get too tangled up with this guy if he's going to threaten to sue you or anything like that, because I don't want you bringing that into the family. And he had threatened me. And so I said, okay, I'll
And-
just leave it to God.
And obviously, but you're very good. He's now an ex-husband, but the husband at that time. But you're good friends. But maybe your husband at the time as well. It was for him.
Well,
For him, maybe it was also he didn't want you doing the work. Neither did he.
yeah, well, I don't think I ever would have gone out and promoted the book, because I had already told Mark that if he wanted to promote it, he would have to do the road show, because I had a daughter to raise. And so I wasn't going to be traveling promoting the book. So he was aware that if he did do it, he'd have to do that aspect of it.
But obviously, Mark talks about in my previous interviews with him that you didn't want to know about the book in a sense.
Oh, no, that's not true at all. I did want to know. In fact, I only got one copy. They gave me one copy, and that's it.
Now, let's just put things into context here as well. So, to keep the family happy and together, you chose to walk away from it.
I think more I would say that I didn't want to do battle with him and his girlfriend. So to me, because I'm more of a peaceful warrior, I wasn't going to get embroiled in all of that. I honestly didn't think that much would happen with that book.
But you also wanted to keep peace with your family as well.
Yes, exactly. And Seth did tell me the book wasn't going to sell very well anyway, and not to worry about it.
So, moving this forward then, that was what, 2000 and...
Well, the session started in 2002.
When was the party
I
company?
think probably a year later.
2003. Okay.
I don't remember the exact date. I just remember putting up the money for the first printing because they didn't have any money. And they said I had to pay for it.
Which you were happy to do at the time.
Yeah, it's $1,000. My husband wasn't too happy that I did that, but I wanted to see the book get launched.
Now, why didn't you continue to sort of channel Seth yourself? Why did that not take place?
I think I was really hurt by the whole situation, and having him do what he did, force me out like that. I just really gave up on it. I was like, this, if this is what this world is about, I don't want any part of that.
So, yeah, I see it like this, right? You're a human being. Yes, you may bring the Seth group through, but we're all going through our own crap, aren't we?
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
That is so true. So the way we handle things sometimes, we could look back and say, hey, I could have handled that differently. But you know what? You only get one shot on stage, don't you?
Exactly. And after repeated emails to them and not getting any response, there really wasn't much I could do, because I didn't even know where they were located anymore. So I just was sort of out of the picture whether I wanted to be or not.
So moving this forward then, many years had passed. And had Seth been in contact at all?
Seth was still talking to me on and off over the years. But, I was so discouraged by what happened with the book that I said, I don't want to do any more of these. We're not writing anything more, because obviously look what happened with the first one.
Okay. And then you had tragedy strike your family.
Yes.
Where you lost your daughter as well.
Yes, my daughter passed away in college.
And she was what, 22?
22. Yeah.
So that would have set you off into a very dark place.
Well, it set me off into some space where I'd never been before, And, you think you can be prepared for death, but really you can't, especially when you're a mother and it's your child, And Mark Frost and Seth were the last things that I was thinking about.
Well, that was a long time ago, wasn't it? Yeah. And yeah, of course. And channeling Seth at that time was probably not something you could even think of doing with the grief that you were going through. And we're looking at a couple of years after your daughter passed that your husband then in your marriage broke down.
Yeah, he remarried.
Yeah. So you'd basically lost your whole family,
yeah.
in a sense.
Yeah.
And that's enough to stop anyone in their tracks, isn't it, to want to further this work? I mean, there's not more of a test than that, is there?
No. When you dive into your reality, you just don't know what's going to happen. You want to know the nature of your reality, but I think that I've learned that your reality is pretty fluid, and anything can happen to change it at any given moment. So even if you have plans for tomorrow, they could all change today. So.
And you're, from just knowing you very briefly, much more in the present moment right now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I pretty much have to be in the present moment because I don't make any future plans anymore, because after that experience, it just seemed like what would be the point, If it could be taken away, it could be taken away again, so don't get your hopes up on anything. It's kind of the way I've lived my life ever since.
But then, it's funny, isn't it? There's a bit of a circle going on here now, because I'm sat with you, and you contacted me because you discovered that Mark is still
I did.
doing his work, and that surprised you a little bit.
Yeah, actually, I heard a voice in my head say, go to the YouTube channel and put in Mark Frost and Seth. And so I did it. And I was literally blown away by what I found, and videos of the sessions that I had with him, which I never gave him permission to put up on YouTube. And then I came across your radio shows, and so I looked at those, and I was just astounded, literally, because, well, first of all, everything that he was saying didn't sound like anything like the Seth that I was talking to.
But then that's not to say he is not channeling.
No, I don't know who he's channeling. It just didn't sound like the same person that I was channeling.
Right. Okay. But he could be, and probably is, channeling a form of some version of Seth, do you think, or an aspect of Seth? Or
I don't know. If you take what Seth said, that he wasn't able to do that, then I wouldn't believe that he would be channeling Seth. I would probably believe Seth more than I would believe him at this juncture. So.
But I guess it has also opened you up to speaking to Seth in the few weeks that we've been sort of in contact. The Seth Group has been contacting you more now.
It has, for some reason. And again, I don't know why that is, but it's talking to me. And I think that when it said go to the YouTube channel, I guess it used that as an intro to bring me back into focus about Seth. I don't know how to explain it. I just followed my intuition that day from what I heard, and then everything sort of spiraled from there.
Yeah, and I kind of also want to say this as well. Can you say, and be honest, and you don't have to agree, please. But can you say that whatever has happened with you and Mark in the past, you can forgive?
No, I can't forgive him right now, me personally, because I feel like he stole all that from me, and made a career out of it for himself, and pretty much shoved me into the back burner. And maybe I would have continued to channel Seth had that not happened. But I was a bit upset about that.
And that could have been a test for you as well.
Yeah, whatever it was, I didn't want to deal with that kind of integrity.
No, okay. But we're here now.
Yeah.
And I think, that goes to show something of the channel that you've got, that it probably wants to come back through.
It obviously does want to come back through. It wrote down some things. I haven't let it come through my body. I've only let it do the same automatic writing that it was doing before I had it facilitated through my body, because I don't really want to have that entity coming through my body when I'm just sitting here. And so I didn't give it permission to come through.
Right.
my
Yeah.
physical. I said, if you can talk all you want, because it's just me and my cat now. And so you can talk all you want, but you're not allowed to come into my body at this moment. So please don't
interesting.
attempt to do that, because he used to do that when I was driving.
Yeah. But
And that's kind of scary.
that would be interesting to let it come through with permission, though.
Yeah, with permission, if I'm, I have to mentally prepare myself for that to happen, It's only been a couple of weeks since I since I wrote my response on those videos on YouTube about,
But then, I believe that the material was sent to Robert Butts, wasn't it, for the first 9/11 book?
Yes.
And there was a response letter.
Yes.
And then you responded back to the points that he had raised.
Yes. Seth answered all those questions, or the Seth Group answered all those questions for him.
I'd love to see those response letters.
I have them.
Yeah, I'm going to look at them before I go.
Yeah, so it addressed each one of his questions, and then after that, Robert Butts he didn't endorse the project, and I don't blame him, because that was his life's work, and now all of a sudden some entity called Seth is talking to someone else, and I can see where he would be mad, or maybe not mad, but feeling like Jane's work was being diluted or brought through another person, because obviously I don't have the mental aspects that Jane had. So,
But is it being diluted?
Well, not necessarily diluted, but coming through another channel that, it wouldn't exactly sound the same as her voice, or, what she was hearing from Seth. I just attributed that to my own lack of mental facilities that really
I'm sure with Mark Seth, I think he talks about that, that some of the original work was too sort of, too much. It was too of a higher level, and it needed diluting a little bit so that we could understand it.
Well, me personally, I don't believe that, because I've read some of that Seth material now, and I thought it was really fairly good. Anybody could understand it. But again, I wasn't using the same vocabulary. It's got to be filtered through my consciousness, and so I didn't have the same vocabulary as Jane. Well,
what did Robert Butts kind of leave it with you?
He just said, "Good luck on your project."
Oh.
I mean, he wasn't angry or anything like that, but he didn't want to endorse it or become part of it.
But he still,
But he was very polite about it and said, "Good luck on your project." So I think that was a good way of handling it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is there anything else that you might like to add
to
what we're talking about?
Meaning how? What could I?
Well, I mean, you're not here to...
Oh, no, I'm not here to bash anybody or anything like that, I really would like all those YouTube videos of those sessions of me to be taken down off YouTube, because I didn't authorize them to be there. The ones that he's got up on his private channel. I really don't like that being there. That was never my intention, to see myself on YouTube, even if he blocked my face.
But then we are going to show you, we have shown you in the clip that we've just put on the screen.
Right, but all those little sessions, with Seth and everything, I never thought in a million years that would end up in a public forum like that. I just didn't really, YouTube at the time was really infantile.
Of course it was, back then it was. Yeah, but no, it didn't exist.
Then it didn't exist,
it
right?
only came out in 2007.
Yeah, so see, it was never, I never anticipated being on the web with all that.
Yeah, okay. But if someone's work is, if Mark's work is helping people, then there has to be value in that.
I don't want to comment on Mark's work. I would just as soon not do that, because I come from a different perspective about Mark's work and the relationship that I had between Seth, Mark, and myself.
Okay.
So I won't comment on that.
Okay. How do you feel about just relaxing and just seeing if there's anyone that wants to come forward?
I don't know if this is the time for that or not. You know, when Seth came forward in my body, he'd been talking to me for a very long time before that. And it took some adjusting to get him to come through like that. I think if I was going to do that, it would have to be facilitated, you know, in some sessions with a regressionist or a hypnotherapist that could get me into the more relaxed state to bring him forward.
Okay.
You know?
And that's why I'm meeting the regressionist tomorrow, probably.
I don't know if she may be able to bring him right into the picture.
She will. And then I would like to interview you. Well, Cass Smith, I just want to say thank you for coming on. And I'm looking forward to you pushing your work, bringing through Seth, or your group Seth, which may be a different Seth to Jane Roberts' Seth, right? But it's the group Seth.
Yes, well, that's what it always identified as, but it also identified as being the same. But then, you know, that could be power of suggestion for all I know. Exactly. Because I don't know what happened during those hypnosis sessions, what was suggested to me to say.
Right, absolutely.
Okay, so I can't really validate any of that.
No, but I don't want you to give up on you working with this energy.
Okay.
Do you know what I mean? I mean, yeah. I just feel that you're supposed to do this.
It's already interrupted my life again.
Yes, it's come back for a reason. It's brought me here as well.
Yes, it has. It seems to want to talk about, well, whatever I ask it right now. I've asked a few pointed questions, you know, for my own experiences. I haven't asked it anything about my daughter and any of that. I don't want to go there right now.
No.
But,
no, absolutely not.
You know, it has explained to me, you know, some of the reasons why my own reality still sits where it sits, you know. So.
And it's also talked as well about even when we have past life regression, all lives lie within the DNA.
Right. Yeah. It explained all of that stuff to me the other day.
Yeah. Okay. Well, listen, Cass, just thank you so much for joining us.
You're welcome. It's my pleasure.
Okay, Cass, well, we're going to now move this over to the regression session, and the audience is going to see you put under regression, and we're going to get to speak to the Seth Group.
Okay.
All right.
It's been a long time since you've used this channel.
Who are you?
My name is Alba. Would you connect with my higher self so you can get an image of who I am? Do we have permission to speak?
You do.
Thank you. Who cannot speak to you?
Who else is here?
Hey Seth, this is Kevin. I've met Cass, and I believe you brought us together.
Oh, you're okay.
Thank you very much. Seth, I understand that there's some information at this time that things have changed on this planet? That people are more awake now? That they're more ready to hear? What information did you want to bring us today?
What do you want to know from me?
Well, everything actually, but we don't have enough time. When you were speaking before about the universe, you were giving us so much information, but it seems that humanity has been catching up with all of that you were teaching. I would like for you to give us today a little lesson of what you think that we're ready for. What are we ready to hear today?
I will tell you this. Your consciousness is not always ready to hear what I have to say. Or I should say, maybe it's not really your consciousness because it is wide open to interpretation. Mm-hmm. But your ego consistently blocks the information. Not that it's not being received, but your ego continues to ignore it. I'm not quite sure how I'll be able to convey my message to the greater of humanity at this present juncture in time until they become more receptive and step outside of their own reality into their inner world, where they will be able to hear and understand what I have to tell them in order for them to create a reality that is meaningful to them. Right now, it appears to the people on your planet that they have no choice but to follow the dictates of what others are saying to them, what others are continuously trying to program into them that does not allow for their highest good to come forward, nor does it allow for them to express themselves and their identity, and they are confused.
What would be a good way for us to set aside this ego, this thing that keeps us blocked?
You know, you cannot set aside the ego. It is part of you. It is the director of your consciousness. It directs every moment of your life. What you need to do is integrate and go deeper into your ego to allow it to be more receptive to the beliefs that you hold firm right now, and to break free of the core beliefs that are holding you back. Many of your core beliefs are holding you back from changing your reality to what you really would like to see in your life.
Absolutely, that's it's incredible stuff what you've got to say. I really enjoyed the writings that you are bringing through Cass right now as well. Thank you for that. Let me ask you, Seth, is this the same Seth that came through Jane Roberts? What's the difference between this Seth and the group Seth?
I am part of the group of Seth, and we all came through Jane Roberts at some point or another, but there was one entity that was particularly strong with the resonation of Jane's vibration that was able to talk to her more than the rest of us, but we all took part in those conversations on another level.
Incredible. So is that entity still part of the group, obviously, that came to Jane?
Yes, he is, and he is often here with me.
What is the vibrational match then with Cass and this Seth group?
The Seth group has billions of years of entities in this group. Each one of the entities in the group can match its vibration with a number of beings on planet Earth. However, I will tell you this, that not many beings are receptive to this, so therefore we don't have a big gene pool from which to choose our channel.
Why Cass? What was the karmic connection maybe with Cass?
I have had lives with Cass in the past, and I believe I went through this with her other counterpart, some years ago about our life in India, amongst many others that we had.
Right, okay. So when you've got obviously the Seth community is going to see this video, and you're well aware that by coming through, then they will say that in Seth's books it talks about, in this paragraph, that Seth is only going to come through Jane Roberts.
That is correct. At that time, Seth was only coming through Jane Roberts. However, Jane Roberts' body is no longer available for him to come through, but he has relinquished that and is okay with that. But other members of the group are coming through now to other people on planet Earth.
Right, okay. Is this a special day today?
Not particularly.
Is this a special meeting in the sense that why me? Why Alba? Why this connection right now?
You're asking me why?
Yes.
We want to talk. We have been wanting to talk for a long time. I'm not saying that anything is ever going to come of this. You brought me here. I'm here. I talk to Cass periodically. I brought her to that YouTube site. She's been struggling with that for a while, but she didn't even know that she was struggling with it because it was deep within her subconscious. It's one of the things that's been holding her back from her potential reality that she'd like to create.
Could I help her to get your message out there?
And you most certainly can.
I feel a connection with Cass. I was thinking about it this morning and last night. I was like, she seems so familiar. Getting on with her.
And you're asking?
I am.
What are you asking?
I don't know. Like, is there some sort of connection between us? As in, have I known her before? Bumped into her before at some time?
It's quite possible that you have interchanged your life with hers in other realities, and it's quite possible that you're doing that now in other simultaneous realities. I haven't dug into that to see whether that's so or not. For me, that I would have to step outside of my reality and dive into that one to see if you have a connection there.
But isn't it, I mean, come on, I'm doing a channeling documentary, and then there you are.
And here I am.
So come on, that's not a coincidence though, is it?
Nothing is a coincidence.
So what was your part in making that happen? You must have known I was doing a channeling documentary.
On another level, someone in my group must have known. I wasn't aware of it at the time.
Right.
Well, this meeting has been very synchronistic because the only reason I'm with Kevin today is really to do an interview and a regression on him. So it seems like everything just fell into place. Is this?
Everything always falls into place. The whole universe is mathematically inclined to fall into place. There's nothing in the universe that is haphazard. Everything is orchestrated.
Wonderful.
You don't have control like you think you have control. You assume you have control.
Can you tell me a little bit about Seth? Because we've been told we have free will, and now you're saying that we have no control. Can you
There's
explain
some
that?
degree of free will that you have because you create your reality. But you don't have control over all of reality. Everything that happens around you is not in your control completely. You have the mindset of all of the other subjects that are in that field of dimension there with you.
So we're co-creating?
You're mostly co-creating with each other, exactly. You bring into form the ideas of others and the thoughts of others. And they are the basis for your beliefs about your reality. Your reality is fluid and it changes all the time.
Seth, when you have a thought, and we went through this with Kevin's higher self, when you have a thought, and can that take a very long time to manifest, like decades?
On Earth it can.
Yes. Because I was reading the Seth material probably about more than 30 years ago, and I may have had a thought created, wouldn't it be nice to speak to this entity? Could that have been?
It could have. There's no such thing as instant manifestation on planet Earth. All thoughts have a delay. Earth is a delay. It is a slowed down reality. What you think or what you draw in from the thought sphere has a delayed reality as far as your experience goes. Although your ego will pick and choose from those thoughts which ones it wants to actualize into experience, it often takes the ego some time to decide, unless it's an instantaneous thing that the ego likes because it is in alignment with its beliefs. Then it will allow it to happen immediately.
So what I've been listening to in other people about the ego is really not what you're stating. You're saying the ego really has a very important part.
Very important part, because it directs consciousness.
Now, sometimes the ego steps in the way, though, when we're doing like a session like this. The ego may step in and want to control the session. Can you explain how that works?
Well, the ego is subjected to the beliefs that it is allowing your conscious mind to accept as reality. Your conscious mind is full of experiences and ideas and imaginations that it would like to bring into your subjective reality. However, the ego is going to filter through this first, and the ego will decide the direction that those thoughts will go, those ideas or those beliefs. And then you will set them into stone based on that. You know, your own experiences dictate some of what your beliefs are.
So the ego has to be in a,
It's always in charge.
it's always in charge.
Yes.
Very good. Okay.
You would not have an impetus to even stay alive if you did not have an ego.
So the ego is the one that wants to stay alive.
Absolutely.
How do we direct our lives
Meaning,
with the ego? How do we know what's best for us?
I will tell you that the ego is the one that's deciding what is best for you, and there's got to be some point where you can drill down into the ego and into your conscious bank of experiences that you'd like to experience, and work with your ego on a subconscious level to be able to open it up to other realities that it is entrenched in. When I mean entrenched, it is entrenched in its own belief system that it does not want to, how should I say this? It doesn't want to allow foreign ideas or thoughts to penetrate if it feels that they're not what it wants to accept as your reality.
So in this time when people are waking up to this new idea, it's really talking the ego into accepting this new reality?
The ego will interfere with those beliefs. You have to get down into the core beliefs of what you believe your identity is identified with and which you believe makes up your personality and yourself. Once you drill into the core, you will be able to also drill into all of these sub beliefs that are attached to the core. And like the core has fingers, and lots of fingers come out of that core. And all of those fingers are beliefs and imaginings that you would like to bring into reality, but not necessarily will. You know, but you also have beliefs that you believe are set in stone. And a lot of what the ego does is perceive itself to set in stone your reality.
Where it's actually very flexible.
It is very flexible, and if it allows that to happen, if you really can drill into it, it will be more open and receptive to these ideas, such as channeling, or past lives, or any of the other somewhat metaphysical information that's out there in the world. Most beings don't want to hear about that because it interferes with the security of their reality.
Like religions or what they think is true.
The isms.
Yes, yes.
Yes, and in order to break down those barriers, you really have to study yourself.
To see where those beliefs really came from.
Yes, you have to ask yourself over and over again, what is limiting my experience? What is limiting what I want to do? For instance, I will give you an example because I've been going through this with Cass right now about the yacht. And I believe I spoke to her many times over this about how you're not going to have the yacht until you drill into the core of your beliefs, because you have a lot of limiting beliefs in the core there that will never let you have the yacht.
Mm-hmm. Not enough money.
Not enough money. How will you accept that reality? Can you fit into that reality? You're not good enough for that reality. Cass has a whole slew of I can'ts.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And even though I've given her a lot of information over the years, she's very stuck in a lot of ways.
Mm-hmm. So once we break those beliefs, I'm not good enough, I don't have enough money, when we can talk our ego into saying, yes, it is possible, will that then affect the reality?
Absolutely.
So it
because it opens up the reality to new avenues of joy and excitement and experience in life that have been blocked. Mm-hmm. And as I said before, consciousness cannot be blocked, its ideas can't be blocked, but the ego can certainly just ignore them, which it often does.
And what about the gut feel? Can you tell me a little bit about the gut
Intuition.
feel? Yes.
Yes, that voice speaks to you all the time as well.
So how do you balance the ego with the intuition?
Well, the ego is going to choose, once again, whether it wants to ignore it or listen to it. Again, if it falls within the paradigms of its reality, its subjective reality, the way it views your reality, it will allow it. Otherwise, it's going to get pushed back into the recesses of some, garbage can in your mind where it will sit.
And can you tell me more about intuition?
What would you like to know?
What is it and where does it come from? Where does this wisdom from the intuition
It comes from consciousness. Consciousness is always speaking to you, but you don't always listen to it. Consciousness is a wealth bank of information. You have more information in your conscious state than you realize.
Really? So how do we tap into it? How can we allow ourselves to really tap into this wisdom, into this intuition?
Well, as I said before, it starts with your beliefs, your thoughts about yourself. You have to drill into yourself. You have to ask yourself why you believe certain things.
Yes.
You can't take for face value, as you often do, the beliefs of others without questioning them.
Yes.
And those, if you don't question them, then they form your reality. They form your experiences. They form the experiences that you will have. If you're glued to something that you think everything is bad or everything is good, you will attract everything bad to you, or you'll attract everything good to you. You hold on to the beliefs and they are the glue that bring the experiences to you.
How powerful are we?
In what sense? We're very
Creative?
Your creativity is unlimited.
So anyone has the ability to create anything?
Anyone has the ability to create and to imagine their reality any way that they so choose.
And for those who say, I can imagine, but it's never going to happen.
Again, you have to drill down into the core of your beliefs and find out what is stopping you. What are you hanging on to? It's not necessarily that you're hanging on to something from a past life. As I said to Cass earlier, past lives don't mean anything. They come from another aspect of your DNA, which they're integrated into all of humanity from the first modification forward. You can tap into any past life, but it's not necessarily your own experience. It's not necessarily yours. And your imagination is highly creative, and it will fill in the blanks.
Can we use those past lives, quote unquote, as metaphors to assist us in breaking through some of our beliefs?
They're not your lives. If you assume that they're your lives, you may be taking part in them simultaneously. But they're not the present life that you're focusing on. You can't blame a past life for a present experience because it doesn't exist.
So you have to take responsibility.
You
now,
do.
In the now.
Exactly. You have to take responsibility now and look at what you're creating now in the moment. It's not anything that has to do with what went on or what you perceive to go on in the past.
Can you tell me more, Seth, about the now?
What do you want to know about the now?
Everyone says that you need to be in the moment of now.
Well, that seems to be the current buzzword
Yes.
in your reality at present, but that is not anything that you're always in the now. You just don't realize it.
So when we create, and we're using our imagination, let's say you're daydreaming. Is this really creative? Are we creating
Yes.
something with our imagination?
Yes, the daydreaming and the dream state is highly creative. In fact, you are more alive and more creative in the dream state and when you're sleeping than when you are awake. As I've told Cass before, you are really like walking dead when you're awake. You
Now-
have much more vitality and creativity in the dream state.
Are we creating in our dream state what's a reflection of our Walking Dead state as humans?
You create in the dream state all the time. However, when you're in when the ego is awake, it will oftentimes prevent what you have created in the dream state from coming through into the reality
Okay.
of your present moment.
So we block it there.
It gets blocked. Yes.
Yes. What about lucid dreams? Where some of those dreams feel like they're so real.
They do.
Why is that?
Well, you're stepping in between realities here where you're semi-awake and you're semi-asleep. You're in the dream state, but you're also awake and aware that you're in the dream state. Sometimes you're not even aware that it's the dream state, but it feels like the reality. People don't often know that it's actually the dream state. They just feel that they're outside of their body in another state, and they're awake and they're seeing what's going on, but they are in the dream state. There's many levels and dimensions to the dream state.
Can you explain a little bit about those dimensions? That's interesting. Subject.
You're very, very well traveled in the dream state. Any reality can be created in that state. To bring that into manifestation, though, in the physical reality of your focused current physical body is very hard to do. Because there's so many blocks in place once you're in the physical reality.
Is that by plan?
Well, it has to do both with your subjective and objective reality. And there is plan. There is a lot of forces, unseen and seen, that prevent you from utilizing the full potential of who you are. You need to work around that, or at least try to drill into it to see what is limiting you from the natural programming that goes on with the human race.
Were we ever a race of humans that didn't have such strong egos?
In the beginning, the ego was used for survival mechanisms only. It's been modified.
Is it modified by us or by others?
It was modified by others many times. What you perceive as the human race has been many times modified.
Was it done on purpose?
It was done because the entities that did that didn't like the way the story was going.
Is it still going on?
Yes, it is.
It is.
Yes, it is. It's
What is-
about to go through another one.
It is.
It is.
How are they programming us?
In your daily reality,
Yes.
everything that comes into your mind is a program. Television, media, news, everything is a program. Everything that everyone says to you is part of a program.
And how do we shut that off?
You don't. If you shut it off, you'd be outside of your reality and you wouldn't have a reality anymore. What you want to do is control the programming so that it falls in alignment with the beliefs that you want to create for your reality.
So when we shut off the TV, for example, not read the newspaper, we spend more time listening to our inner guidance. Does that help?
Yes, that does.
And I've been hearing a lot for people to meditate.
Meditation is quite beneficial to the human form.
What does meditation do?
Meditation will bring you deep within, when you're within, to the inner self. And when you are in the inner self, you have a great deal of communication that can go on between the outer world and the inner world. The inner self is basically the director of the inner world of your thoughts. For instance, let's just say that you believe that you have some sickness.
Yes.
And you follow that sickness with the protocols that the rest of humanity would follow by going to the doctor, etc.
Yes.
If you were to meditate and go into your inner self, you would be able to find out why it is that you have the dis-ease in the first place. And then you would be able to cure that without interference from outside sources.
So by finding the origin of what created that dis-ease,
Yes.
then you can change the programming within your own cells.
And your thoughts and your beliefs and your assumptions about your reality are what create those dis-eases or imbalances in the physical world.
So anything can be cured.
Anything can be cured. There is no such thing as disease as you know it. It is an imbalance of the energy field of your body, and it comes from the thoughts and beliefs that you have put into place. And many of these are subconscious, and you don't realize that you're even thinking them, but you have accepted them as your reality a long time ago. And they're there. They're like the glue that brings that experience.
So for example, when someone says, heart disease is part of my family history. My mother had heart disease, my grandmother had heart disease, so I'm concerned about heart disease.
And you will be, because you're accepting heart disease as a disease that you're going to have.
So it's very important to go within and deprogram ourselves.
Precisely.
Wow. And all of these cures that we hear about, is that part of the programming, that if we believe something is a cure?
If you believe something is a cure, it can cure you. If you drink milk and you believe it's a cure, it will cure you.
Yes.
Because it's based on the belief system.
Okay. So everything is belief.
Exactly.
Wow. It's big. It's very big.
Hi, Seth. Obviously, I met Cass through. She contacted me when she discovered that Mark Frost was now channeling you. Is Mark Frost channeling anyone from your group?
He is not.
What aspect of Mark Frost is he channeling? Is he channeling an aspect of his higher self?
Precisely.
Is that wrong or right?
There's no wrong and right in channeling an aspect of your higher self, if you want to call it that. It's basically the dialogue that goes on with your conscious mind and your inner self. Anyone can tap into that.
Why can't we tap into you, though? Why couldn't I channel you, though?
You're not wired to channel me.
And you said the same thing about...
There are beings in my group that are wired to channel with you, but I am not a match for you.
But are you the group? Am I speaking to the group right now?
You are.
So as the group...
The group identity is many beings. You're speaking with one of the beings of this group.
Which is the one that closely relates to the match for Cass.
Exactly.
Right, okay. But when I channel myself, because my channeling got me to make this documentary, and I'm saying, or my channel tells me that there's a member of the Seth Group in my team, is that possible?
That is possible.
I never interact with that member, do you know that?
There's many members of this group. They are all reaching out to humanity on some level.
But you could be aware of that member that's on my group? You could be aware of that member? Or
I'm presently not focused on that member.
are you aware of other channels out there, other groups?
I'm aware that there are other channels.
Sorry, are you aware of other groups out there like you, other groups that call themselves different names through different human beings? Or,
There are many groups.
but are you aware of them?
We are aware of them. We are aware of them. They're not part of our group.
Okay. Can Cass, is it beneficial for Cass to forgive Mark?
It would be beneficial for Cass to forgive Mark, but Cass will not forgive Mark until I can penetrate through her consciousness that she needs to get into that belief system. Right now, she lives in victimhood on that one, and to some degree, she wants to hang on to the victimhood because she feels as though this entity named Mark Frost has stolen money from her that should have gone to her over those years. Money doesn't mean anything in the nature of the reality, but Cass has felt slighted by that.
Okay.
And we do not talk to Mark Frost because when you come out of the integrity of yourself, you will not be allowed to talk to anyone in the Seth Group. The Seth Group does not energetically line up with people of that caliber.
I'd like to ask Seth, when we first began speaking and I asked you to connect with my higher self, and then you saw Kevin, what do you perceive from a person, from their field, when you're dealing with them? How can you tell if they're one of integrity?
We know what their thoughts are. Before we energetically line up with them, we tune into them.
So this meeting that we have today, was this something that you as a group joined with our higher selves to connect?
We did.
Okay. So it was the synchronicity that we felt was because it was being divinely guided. It was being guided by...
We say it was guided.
Well, it was pretty good. Thank you very much for that. It was a great gift.
A great gift to the world.
You are most welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you. Is there more books that would like to come through, Cass, with yourself, Seth, if that was something that Cass was in agreement with?
I can tell you this right now, that Cass has much hesitation regarding books because the first one was what she perceived to be stolen, and she has reservations, and I will work with her on that. However, she is fearful that Mark Frost will take the information and use it as his own.
But that's not, that's her truth, though, isn't
It is her truth. In the present moment, she believes these things.
And how do you think that this interaction today, after so many years, will assist her? Do you think that this will help with breaking down?
I've been working with Ashram for so many years, and there are many stumbling blocks between her and her ideas.
But if she hears them,
She hears them. She's quite stubborn.
But though I do feel here, to be in this moment right now, for her to have trusted us to get to this point right now, that's a movement of energy.
yes.
It is. She was very reluctant to come here.
But she did.
She came because of my prompting with her last night. I told her that she should not leave this hanging.
No.
She's not going to be able to move forward in her own life experience unless she clears this up.
And I'm guessing I'm going to help her do that by even putting this video out there as well.
We would assume that this will be the case.
Mm-hmm.
We cannot say for sure, as all probable realities are fluid and fluctuate constantly.
Yes, I've never felt such resonance with someone before to help them get their truth out there.
Mm-hmm.
It feels the right thing to do.
Yes.
It shows your integrity.
Mm-hmm. And my work is all about loving kindness. And my work is all about forgiveness. So I would like to help Cass with this forgiveness. Do you think that we should work again in the future when she is able to let go of some of this?
By all means. Mm-hmm. We need as many facilitators on earth to enlighten your group as we can find.
Can I ask you, do you have memories of interacting with old class people from the Seth classes or from Jane Roberts' classes when they interacted with you many years ago?
We did not see them personally, but we were aware of the channel because Seth, the Seth that Jane Roberts spoke with, is part of our group. Mm-hmm. He is just as much part of our energy as Jane was of the energy of her body.
When you channel,
we are multi-dimensional beings and can split into many simultaneous realities at any given moment.
So the Seth that we are speaking with is really an aspect. It's split up. It can be in different channels at the same time.
It absolutely can.
Mm-hmm.
There's an African-American mother and daughter that I met on my channeling journey as well in Atlanta. They say they're channeling Sethia, which is another aspect of you. Would your group recognize these women?
They are part of our group.
Mm-hmm. How large is your group?
Oh, our group has hundreds and thousands of entities in it. We are billions of years old.
Wow.
We just do not talk to Earth. We talk to many beings throughout the galaxies.
How do you see the Earthlings right now?
Very primitive.
So we're pretty much like cavemen compared to the world, the galaxies?
You are not allowed in our galaxy because of the warring nature. But it is not your fault. It was part of the modification.
How were the original humans?
The original humans do not exist anymore.
How were they?
They started out peaceful and they ended up worse than you. They were infiltrated by another race of beings, completely corrupted them. We had to destroy them.
How were they destroyed?
We wiped them out. We erased their DNA.
Wow.
We created a new species. And I'm not saying we from the Seth group, but our beings in our galaxy.
Yes.
But you didn't destroy their souls. Their souls continued.
Their souls went on, but the race, the human race that was created was wiped out. It was corrupted. We could not allow that.
And who brought in the new humans?
Other beings from our galaxy.
Did they look different than the original ones here?
They do look different than the original ones that were here. They're quite smaller.
Oh, so the original ones were larger?
They became larger.
Okay. Was that because of external forces or
Yes.
interbreeding or
Interbreeding with other galaxy beings that shouldn't have been there.
are those what they call the fallen angels?
Fallen angels is a term that's used in the Bible.
Right. Well, this is why I say that, because some people say that some of these quote-unquote fallen angels were very large.
They were giants.
And those are the ones that were modifying the humans?
That race was modified as well and destroyed. The human race has been destroyed several times. However, the DNA of that race of giants is still active within the DNA of the humans right now, to some degree. There are remnants of it, which is what makes your race so warmongering.
Is there any way that we can modify and remove that piece?
You're going to.
How
It
is-
is coming about. I'm not allowed to tell you all about it because it hasn't happened yet, but it is in the works.
Seth, is that within our lifetime or much farther away?
Some of it is starting to happen now, but it is very secretive, and you will not find out about it just yet.
Okay. Because I've noticed that some of the children that are being born now are a little different. They're coming in with special abilities. They're coming in with different ideas of how things should be on Earth. And I was wondering if that's
Each
part
child comes in with those abilities. This is nothing new.
So what is it? Why is it that we're noticing it more now?
That you're noticing it because you're becoming more and more awake. Your society, as you know it, is becoming more and more secular. Your society at one time was very religious and believed in God, and it is moving away from God into a secular society where, as you can see, identity is being stripped,
Yes.
both physical, mental, and spiritual.
So as we awaken, we notice these things more.
You do. Each one of you comes into your life experience with a wealth of potential. That is your, your inherent right to bring forward to your race. However, it is often blocked by the programming of external forces that do not want to see you move forward.
So the forces, would they be things like even school?
They are influenced by those forces, yes.
So the way we program our children, the way we teach them?
All programming is done with an agenda from those forces.
Okay. So because we're seeing different types of schools now coming up, where the children are allowed to really manifest what they want in their life.
They're not manifesting anything.
Well, they're not.
They are being programmed into a secular reality of no identity, which is preparing the way for the next modification.
Which we're not allowed to know about.
You will find out soon enough.
Seth, is this going to be a happy thing? A good thing?
Not in the sense that the human race will think it's a good thing.
No.
It is necessary, however, because of the warmongering nature of the race. In order for the race to move outside of its present reality and be allowed into the other aspects of the universe, galaxies, and beyond, this modification will have to take place.
Will our bodies change?
They will.
Because I've been hearing people talk about the rainbow body and things like that.
There's no such thing as a rainbow body.
Will our bodies be changing to something else?
They will.
But you can't tell me that?
I'm not allowed to discuss this at this present moment in time.
Okay. When do you think that we'll be ready to hear about this?
You will find out. It will happen on its own.
Okay.
We have an agreement that we are not to interfere with this.
Is that because of our free will?
No, we have an agreement with other beings throughout the galaxy that we are not going to interfere with this.
Okay. Good. All right. Thank you.
When I go see different channels, they say different things. Like some will say there's a rainbow body, some will say, like you say, there's not. Others will say different things. Why do different channels say different truths?
Their perceptive reality allows them to say whatever they feel like they will say.
So some different channels have different perceptive realities. I'm not talking about the humans, I'm talking about the consciousness that's coming through them, the groups coming through them.
Whatever buzzword is going to work to wake up the consciousness is probably why they do these things. Mm-hmm. We don't really get into the minutia of all those buzzwords that you use in your current world.
Mm-hmm.
But is it the human beings maybe blocking the information, and it's only 2% really of what's coming through, right? As an example, is the human being blocking the information when it comes to them channeling the information through these other groups that are out there that call themselves different names?
All information has to be filtered through the belief system of the channel.
How much is Cass filtering you?
Cass filters me all the time. I would say a lot more if I could, but I can't.
Was that the same with Jane Roberts?
Yes, it was.
And how much in percentage now you can look back, or I guess, could you say that you were being censored by Jane, percentage-wise?
No, I'm not being censored in the respect that I can't say what I want, but Cass will not believe any of it. She'll allow some of it to come through, but I will tell you this right now. I am off limits to the subject of Jesus Christ with her. I am not allowed to talk about that because her belief system is contrary to our belief system.
So then, going back to what I was saying then, can the human being stop information coming through based on their belief system, or is it based on that they're not just getting out of the way for the information to come through?
Look at it this way. If someone shows you a pear and a kagagagugu and you never saw the kagagagugu, you're not going to let it in because you don't know what a kagagagugu is. You have no direct experience with that, so therefore that will not even perceive into your reality because you can't hear it. You can't decipher what it is, so it will not be allowed to come through.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Yeah.
So the information that's coming through now, obviously, you know, when I've been to see people and they're now talking about, when I get to interview the channels and they're talking about the multidimensional reality, which is what you spoke about years ago through Jane, I guess we're still at that level.
Anything that's familiar to you within your language structure, you'll accept.
Yeah.
But if it comes outside of the structure of your language, you will not accept it.
Mm-hmm.
And we use many terms in our group that are not familiar to you at all.
Mm-hmm.
But they explain much deeper levels of reality, but we cannot penetrate that into your consciousness at the present moment. We are restricted to use the vocabulary from which you choose to filter your reality.
Is your progression our progression? And our progression your progression?
We are always progressing, and your progression affects our progression, and vice versa.
And do we live in a multi-dimensional universe where this is happening in another dimensional reality somewhere else as well?
You have many lives and many dimensions and many realities that you're acting out right now, and you're completely unaware of them because the attention is focused in this present reality. But I assure you that you are highly active and quite vital in many realities throughout the universe.
So a crazy question, right? If we wanted to connect with Jane Roberts now, that was channeling one of your group, we could connect with that Jane Roberts and speak to her in that class.
You would have to get Jane Roberts' permission to do that.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
And her name is not Jane.
What's her name?
Rupert.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Mm-hmm.
That is very correct.
That's correct. That's correct. Yes,
that's
it is.
correct.
Mm-hmm. So when we first started talking here, when I asked you what you had to say, you basically said we're not ready for it. That we're not at that level where you can explain things because we're not at that level of understanding yet.
That is correct.
Mm-hmm. So Seth, what is something that we can understand? We've had a little dialogue today about the ego. What is important for us to know at this time to awaken even more?
Look at the writings that I gave you years ago. None of you have really penetrated any of those teachings to any degree that would give you a spring forward, as we say, into a higher level of existence. We cannot go farther until you grasp what you've been taught already.
Mm-hmm. So we're still in kindergarten. We're still learning how to...
That is your term.
We're still learning.
We are all learning. Earth, you are here to learn on Earth.
Yes.
That is your job. That is why you are here.
Mm-hmm.
Very briefly, what would you say to people watching this right now who are Seth fans, Sethians, or whatever you want to call them, who will say, this lady is not bringing through Seth. This is not Seth.
They can say what they want. I am an aspect of that Seth. As I've said before, I am not the exact same being that Jane Roberts wrote about in her books. Why is it that people want to make me into that being when I am not that being? I am an aspect of that being, and that being is part of our group, and we all have a group consciousness, and we communicate with each other. I will not come in and negate the work of the present, the past channel, Rupert and Joseph, to dilute that information. It is valid. The validity of everything that was written there was meant for your well-being and to bring you into a higher level of awareness about yourself.
Thank you. And could Cass bring you through without having to go down into a regressive state? Could she channel you consciously?
I suppose at some point she would be able to do that again, but she's, as I said, very stubborn. She has her beliefs about how she can bring me through, and I do not challenge that at this present moment.
Is there anything that we could help her with, or to say that to show her that it's possible that she can do this?
In time, as you know it, she will come around. You realize I have not spoken through her in many years in your frame of time, and she has a delay there in accepting these teachings coming through her body.
Well, let me say this to you. Isn't this not? I was going to say, isn't this crazy? But it's all divine. I really wanted to have Seth on my documentary. There's me marching up to go see Mark. Then you step in and you bring Cass to me, and I get to speak to you.
All in order as it should be.
It's brilliant. It's wonderful. Thank you for this gift.
I'll just say it's an honor to speak to you, and thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Do you have anything else to say to us before I take her out of this wonderful state?
I will continue to write through her. There's much that I have to say, and it doesn't have anything to do with the past writings. There's much I would like to put out there to her. Whether or not she's going to be willing to share those, I cannot say at this present moment. If you work with her, perhaps this will happen.
Very good. We'll work with her. Thank you very much, Seth. It's been an honor. And I hope I get to meet you again. Thank
You're
you.
very welcome.
Thank you.